Hello students and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy as we continue the economic survey chapter wise series. So we'll continue now with chapter 9, that is on agriculture and food management. Now agriculture in economy plays a huge role, especially for your prelims and mains both. In fact, in mains, half of the economic questions since the last few years have been related to agriculture. So let's see what has been the performance and what has been the reason for the same in agriculture and food management. So if you look at the CAGR, that is compound annual growth rate for the output of agriculture and allied sector, like related sector, for example, dairy farm. So it's an allied sector of agriculture. So what has been the performance? If you look at agriculture and the allied activities together, the growth rate has been 3.6%. That is for the period of 2011-12 to 21-22. That means for a decade. So for a decade, the growth rate has been 3.6%, close to 4%. Agriculture has been the slowest growing sector, has seen the least growth as compared to industries and the services sector. Services sector, of course, a very fast growing sector. There are inherent reason in agriculture why the growth rate is slower, because the land is limited, right? The productivity cannot increase all of a sudden. You cannot double, or increase the speed of the growth of the plant, etc., which can be done in the industrial sector. And in service sector, of course, the growth can be exponential as well. As a result of which, due to certain inherent reasons, this is the growth rate. Plus, there are issues of El Nino in the sense that drought would be there in so many areas because of reduced rainfall. We'll see all those reasons as well going forward. If you take into account the specific division of agriculture sector, you will see that the fisheries sector has grown at a very fast pace, as well as meat and eggs. Along with it, if you talk about the condiments and spices, and you have livestock and milk. So as you can see, this livestock, fisheries, milk, meat and egg, these are all allied sector. This has grown at a very fast pace, and in fact the allied sector is there to support the income of the farmer, give more certainty to the income, because the crops and the growth of the crops, the cereal, the paddies, etc., is dependent on the vagaries of the climate, and the output over there is very uncertain, income is very uncertain. That is why these sectors are important, and you can see the growth rate also in these sectors are the highest in this domain. If you look at all crops taken together, it's 2.1%, with pulses seeing a very high growth, as well as fruits and vegetables, whereas oil seeds and cereals are lower than the average. So this has been the performance. You can clearly see the allied sector doing well. Now, if you look at the productivity of India as compared to the world, you will see that in every single thing mentioned here, the productivity of India is less than the world average. Now, when you're talking about the world average productivity, there are many countries which might have lesser than India also, which reduces the world's average productivity. Because if we compare it with only the highest productivity countries of the world, it will be further lower, the gap will be further high. But if we take into the average of the other countries, then you can see that there is still gap, not much, but still there is gap. There is one particular crop in which the gap is very high, that is the crop of maize. Here the productivity of USA, the total quantum of production as well as the productivity of the USA in maize is extremely high, and hence maybe the difference over here. Now cereals, okay, not much of a percentage wise difference, pulses also, but when you see maize and soybean, there is a huge difference, whereas when you talk about groundnut, it is neck to neck. So we are competing, but we have a long way to go over here. If you look at the performance of kharif crops means crops of the rainy season, you will see year on year there is, if you compare it with 23-24, you will see that there has been a growth in every major kharif crop, though very slight, but there has not been a downfall. Be it rice, bajra, ragi, tur, soyabean, etc., there has been a growth. Now, except for one, that is urad dal, which has gone down, and in fact two, ragi, that has gone down. Now urad dal has gone down, but the government in budget has come up with focus on pulses, talking about Atmanirbharta in pulses with Urad, Tur and Masoor being the focus area. So we can expect this to further increase and be more, right? Now, why are we seeing this increase except for a couple of the major crops? It is because the El Nino effect is now receding. La Nino will now be coming up. So there is a transition period. The droughts and all are reducing, and more we'll see in the coming year. So we can expect increase in productivity. Of course, too much of rain and flooding of through the rain is also not good, especially for certain crops like cotton, for example, but it is going to comparatively increase as compared to the El Nino years. Now, the trends in gross irrigated area is also good, as we can see that there is a continuous increase in the irrigated area. So India has traditionally been a rain-fed agriculture country, but now the percentage of irrigation is increasing, and we are now over 50%. We are having over 50% irrigated area. Now, under irrigation, micro irrigation is specifically more important or more beneficial. So a focus on the area of micro irrigation is also here. And if you compare it with 510 to 1523, that means with a gap of, let's say, around 10 years, you can see 10 to 13 years, you can see that there has been a growth from, in fact, you can see the growth is probably of 4 times. So it has grown 4 times, which is a huge amount of growth that we are talking about. Now, this is a very important histogram. As you can see, this talks about the deviation in rainfall. So we saw that the growth in agriculture has been 3.6% overall in the last decade, but at the same time we need to take into context the deviation of the rainfall. So how much has the rainfall deviated? It has deviated, the highest deviation you can see is minus 22.1. So 22.1% of deficient rain. At the same time, if you talk about the excess, it is 10.4% excess. So excess is also quite high by high percentage, but deficiency is even more with a higher percentage. 22, 21, 13, there are double digit deficiency in so many years, resulting in or affecting the productivity of the agricultural sector. Now, another graph which the which economic survey gives here is a good one about institutional versus non-institutional credits. It is clearly visible that the institutional credits are on the rise and non-institutional credits are declining. So let's have a look at it. If you talk about share of institutional credits, so share of institutional credits, 1951, it's 7.5 decades back. So there have been a lot of increase over here up to here. So in fact, if we look at it, I don't know why this long graph is given, because this probably shows a great performance of the government of that time, because after that, if you look at it from 63, it has of course gone down, and the increase is not much. Is not much. Even if you look at from 2015 to 2022, almost 7-8 years, the increase is not much. The exponential increase was here. But anyhow, we need to take it with a pinch of salt. What do I mean by that? By that I mean that when certain things, anything is at a very low level, it is sort of, the growth will sort of be exponentially fast. It will be faster because you are increasing that thing over a small base. Imagine a batsman making 10 runs in the first ever innings and getting out. Now, if they have to improve their batting average, so batting average is 10. So if they have to improve their batting average by 100%, for example, in the next inning, they have to make how many runs? They have to make just 30 runs, so that the total runs become 40 and the batting average becomes 20 from 10. So just by making 30 runs, they can increase the batting average by 100%. But if the batsman would have made 100 runs already, for them to increase the batting average by 100%, they would have to make 300 runs, which is quite a Herculean task. So with a small base, it is easier to grow at a faster rate. That also needs to be understood. At the same time, the non-institutional credit has a decline, again an exponential decline in the same period, but then slight growth, and now the decline is not much, it rather looks like stabilized. But still, if you look at it, 75% institutional and only 25% is non-institutional, which is good. However, if you synchronize this with the graph in one of your NCRTs, which is not mentioned in the economic survey, is the graph or the data which talks about the percentage of this loan or the percentage of loan taken by the big farmers and the percentage of loan taken by the small farmers. So what happens is 90% and more big farmers are taking institutionalized loan, and 80% and more of the small and marginal farmers are taking non-institutionalized loans. Means what? Means that the majority chunk of this institutionalized loan is going to the big farmers and not the small and marginal. So that is one thing where the government needs to focus. Remember this, especially for your mains answer writing. Now, if you look at the irrigation, let us understand the impact of irrigation through the two graphs that are given. One is the graph of the state of Jharkhand, which has the lowest area under irrigation, and the state of Punjab, which has the highest area under irrigation. So if you look at Jharkhand having the lowest area under irrigation, what is the kg per hectare productivity? The kg per hectare productivity in all the cases is below 2500 in all the cases. But if you look at Punjab, you will realize that it is way beyond. If you take the 4000 marks, almost all the years is above 4000, and some year it is above 4300 as well. So it is 70-80% more productive than the state with the lowest irrigation. So that is the impact the irrigation can have, is what the economic survey is trying to tell us. However, there can be a downside of it as well. What are the downside? For example, because irrigation is present, you are growing any crop disregarding the availability of the rainfall or the amount of rainfall in that area. And then what happens? With the help of irrigation, you basically extract the groundwater, and the groundwater does not replenish, and the groundwater table keeps going down. When the groundwater table keeps going down, the water availability is less. Then what happens? If you have to dig deeper for the groundwater, what happens is you will be meeting the heavy metals which will put in toxicity in the food chain. So all those issues are being faced over here. However, that does not mean we should stop the development of irrigation and micro irrigation. That should be there, but also we need to start growing crops which are more suitable for a particular geographical and climatic region. Thank you.